I just started the recording.
Let's see.
Hey, John, bunch of people on the other Zoom.
Oh, really?
Really?
Yeah,
Which,
because well, people have several calendar invite. Yeah, David sent me this link, so I joined, and Jason just joined that link. I didn't get a chance to.
the really old one from the LFX. See, they you can't even delete.
Yeah. Yeah, I tried to delete a couple times. It came back for some reason. I don't know why.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, I don't even know if I still have that one. Yeah, I don't know if you were able to get in there.
Want me to jump back on and forward people over again?
That would be awesome, David. Thank you.
All right, I'll do that.
David was like a shepherd to move the sheep to here. Yeah.
It's so frustrating.
Thank you, David.
So, all right. So I think we have.
Sorry, I just posted this meeting Zoom link in the Slack, but somebody told me that it doesn't work.
Oh, really?
We're all here.
It worked for me.
Puzzling.
No one's in the other room right now.
Okay.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, when I left, I saw Jensen, the VPO for Mama Near, just joined. I think she's also the TSM member.
Okay.
I think she's just joined this one too.
Oh, Jamie, you're here? Okay, good.
Okay, awesome. So we have two, there's only one thing written on the agenda, but I did want to call one thing to people's attention, which is I sent out yesterday to the mailing list a form to try and gather about, to form our teams. And so if you have not yet responded to the form, and I'm trying to find I'll put it in the chat.
Is
Yeah,
it a new form compared to the one that have already been circulated, or is it the same one?
This is one that I sent out yesterday that says, here are the 5 teams, some project teams. Which one do you want to be involved with? So
that's a new one, and I think involved means you either contribute. I think
yeah,
you will contribute to one of the team, and that could be in the form of, I think, anything, review, documentation, module testing, coding, ISO, all of the stuff, basically. But if you say yes, you expect, so that doesn't mean you can still be in the meetings and have an opinion and stuff like that, but contribute, I think, in our world or words means you deliver docs or code or tests or something like that. Yeah, right?
Yeah, I mean, that'll be up to each team. Like this is really just to get the bootstrap the teams, and the people who are involved in the beginning are going to, for example, decide the meeting time, right? So like, if this is an area you want to contribute to, you probably want to get involved soon so that you have some influence over those kind of things. But the reality is, it's open community. Anybody can join any team at any time. But if you commit to something, we expect you to deliver, right? That's like anything else. But just by showing up at the meeting, you're not committing. You would be signing up for issues and things like that. Is how it would run. Bala.
Sorry, John, I think you got to it. Sorry, I did not get to the email yet. I'm slightly under the weather. I'll get to it by end of day today. I think you already my question. Yeah, I think I wanted to ask whether somebody could sign up for more than one. You already answered that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll leave the forum open at least through the end of the week, but it's really just to bootstrap the process. Like it's all fluid, really, in the end. So that's all I had to say about that. And I think the other item on the agenda, do we have Karen? I don't know if I'm saying that right.
Clary.
Yeah, sounded good. Well, I go straight into it.
Yeah, yeah. If you, yes, just jump in.
Okay, thanks for the opportunity. I guess a lot of people don't know who I am, so my name's Kieran Johnston. It's a hard C at the beginning, otherwise any pronunciation is fine. I'm based out of Ireland. I work for Ericsson. I've been in OSS, software development and architecture for the last 20 plus years. So I've kind of been in and around telco systems for a while. A lot of that time in deployment and CI/CD and stuff like that as well. So this topic is quite a lot of interest to me. I've also previously been involved in ONAP on the TSC there and involved in some architecture work as well. So some of you might remember me from there. The reason for bringing this agenda item here was to kind of maybe take on a little bit further the discussion that we kicked off at the TSC meeting last, the days are flowing into each other now, I think it was last Thursday. We discussed the possibility of introducing Helm support as a kind of an activity, probably quite a long lead time activity, but something that we wanted to kick off to start the discussion and to understand how and when and why we might do that. So just to take that a bit further, I've prepared a few slides with some input myself and a couple of colleagues from the Ericsson side, and Vim as well has had his eye on it. So I'll just share those from here if I can find the right button in this share screen, the green button. And then choose a window. Okay, so let me know if you can see a screen.
Yeah, all good.
Yeah. Okay, hopefully it's the right one. Let's see if I put it into presentation mode. Does that make things worse or better? Actually, I'm going to leave it in non-presentation mode so I can start adding comments and take some notes, because really this is kind of an information gathering discussion more than anything. So I guess first of all, a bit of a recap. Why are we looking at bringing Helm support when you're doing lots of cool new things in Nefio? From our perspective, we see that the use of Helm charts for deploying Kubernetes workloads is pretty ubiquitous. We've been using it in telco for quite a while. There's been quite a significant investment over several years, and the reality is that a lot of those workloads will continue to use those Helm charts for some time to come. So we'd see it as a critical path, and I guess in my career anyway, I've seen technology evolution is getting faster and faster. It's not slowing down, and we're not sort of crystallizing on one technology stack, which means that as we move on to the next technology, we're kind of bringing the previous iterations with us. And in my view, this type of evolutionary approach is important to be able to bring existing capabilities and coexist with them. So that transition over to CRDs is going to happen gradually, and running alongside Helm orchestrated workloads, I think would be fairly critical. So we propose we have an urgent discussion on SIG automation. We are having a discussion on SIG automation, so we can assume that proposal has been acted upon. And what we wanted to do was to produce a framework to help us to understand how we could enable Helm support in Nefio, and maybe have it documented for consideration, not in the R1 release, quite obviously, but maybe in R2 or R2++. So that's the background. I just have 2 more slides really with some information, which will take me about 3 minutes to talk through. I guess first of all, we believe that there's a number of sort of guiding principles that we should use to inform any type of activity that we do in this space. We just listed a few ones here, and maybe when I've gone through the next slide, maybe we can jump back to this and see if anybody else has anything to contribute. Excuse me. So things like adhering to the principles of Nefio, we want declarative, we want Kubernetes resource models, we want to stick to the concept of configuration as data. We want to bring this support in over a number of releases, so we don't think this is kind of a fly-by-night type of support. We think it's something that will be around for a while, so we want to kind of try and make it work effectively. And then we also want to sort of make sure that as kind of a side effect of this process, that maybe we can ensure that we can support current and future LCM tools that also adhere to the same core principles. That's just some suggestions of things that we would consider as the guiding principles that we would use to steer the work. The next slide really talks about how we might take this forward, and this again is open to discussion. So I guess I'll just quickly run through what's on the slide and then we can just open it up. So the first thing we would do to be run a study activity in parallel to R1, so taking us up to about June, baselining those principles, setting scope, identifying any of the implementation choices, identifying sort of a particular application or set of applications that we can use as reference examples, and then running through some POC activities. And I'd see that as a kind of an iterative thing that we could run a few POCs and test out the different architectural proposals. Then after that, we would push for some kind of minimum viable product implementation for the R2 release, and then see how we get on with that, and then increment applying going forward. That's kind of the loose suggestion that we sketched out. I can see a hand up already. So Tal, I think you're.
Yeah, thank you for this. This is, this has been discussed for a while, but we really needed a push to put this to the forefront. But I have a question for you and other people who drafted this. I know we're going to study this and take a closer look at all the implications, but for now, is the thought to use pre-existing Helm charts, right? The investment in that, or is it an investment in the technology? Because there is a way we can support Helm as a technology, but say, well, there are specific Nefio requirements, right, that you still need to fulfill to participate. You can't just take any old Helm chart. You can use Helm as a tool if you're invested, but maybe there are specific Helm plugins that you have to use, or hooks. I'm not sure. Again, I'm just asking to think about, what is your thinking about that?
So, I mean, that's a really good consideration, I think, to be taken in. So effectively, if I can feedback to you, what I think you're saying is, are there certain constraints that we would impose upon or design rules on Helm charts that were Nefio compliant? Is that more or less what you're saying?
Right. I guess the question is, the title is Helm support, but are we saying, do we want to support Helm the technology in a cloud native way, or do we want to preserve the existing investments in Helm charts, right? Those are two different things. And the answer could be both, by the way.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I don't have a straight answer right now. I think, I think one of the guiding principles is to support the existing investment, but if there are constraints on, the range of Helm charts, like if you wanted to go completely out there with every single possible Helm feature to the nth degree, then maybe there are certain constraints that we want to impose. I think that's what you're saying. PMO
Right.
admin.
Especially because you phrased this as a transition, a multi-year transition. It could be that the best answer is both.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have more, Tal, or I just wanted to jump on the same thing. I think what we probably have to do here is try to understand maybe the minimal viable product, as you said, right? So what is basically try to frame the requirements that we want to achieve. So for example, one thing could be, as Tal said, I have existing Helm charts. I want to have support of Nefio to be able to use them.
There is a lot of background noise somewhere.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, I don't know from where it comes.
I think it was me, sorry.
Okay. Yeah, so there is one is, okay, you have a set of Helm charts today, and okay, I think we probably have to rephrase the Helm charts, how they are used. Is it just to get a network function deployed, or are there other Helm charts that are being used for other things beyond that? And then there is the question of, okay, like Tal said, is you want to have Helm as a first-class citizen within Nefio, adhering to the principles and stuff like that. They are, in my view, two very different potential ways of achieving or satisfying the requirements. And I think it's important for us to understand what do we have to do, because I believe, Kieran, correct me if I'm wrong, is that we believe that the end goal should be CRDs, right? So in other words, that Helm will not be needed at the end goal. Did I get that right? If that is true, so that also helps probably to understand and to shape what we need in order to get support for that. So yeah, so that's what I wanted to clarify and potentially raise as a vehicle to get through the bottom of that somehow. Right?
Yeah, so I just tried to capture that as are we looking to support Helm as a first-class citizen in a cloud-native way, or are we looking just to protect that investment while we make a transition? And I think that comes back to, I think the principle where we said it has to be over a number of releases. So then we talk about first-class citizen here, but I think we need to define what that means and what sort of constraints we have on that. And really, I don't have answers right now, but I just wanted to bring it up as a kind of
correct. So
something to
yeah,
consider.
what I'm trying to say is that in this whole journey of Helm support, we need to clarify what we really want. So basically, that's I think one of the important things that we have to clarify, because I think it has a meaningful impact of how that could be accomplished potentially. Sorry.
Okay, I think it was John and then David.
Yeah, partly I just want to second or third what Tal and Wim are saying. That's an important question. I do, although perhaps I come across as an ideologue sometimes. I'm actually a pragmatist. Like in the end, we're going to likely forever have pieces of Helm in there. So I do think that while we need to answer this question, it's probably more a question of prioritization of use cases. It's likely that there may be things Helm's really good at that we just want to keep it for. Maybe. So, you know, I guess that's one point. The other point I wanted to make is that sort of going back to your idea of, okay, we're going to do a study in parallel with R1. So that's going to be challenging for, I mean, R1's going to suck all the air out of the room for a while. And so, at least for some of us. So my concern is that not all the voices will be represented in that study if people are heads down on R1. So I understand that the desire to do that in parallel, but I just want to raise that as a potential issue. Third thing I wanted to bring up is, and we brought and Wim already shared some of this, but what would be super helpful in that study process is looking at existing Helm charts for existing, you know, product, real production level Helm charts that, and actually working to adapt some of them to the, like how do we reuse those? How do we incorporate those? Like, I think that's kind of what your whole idea is with the study, but I want to make sure we do it with some real world ones, even if we start with toy ones. Fourth thing, if I haven't forgotten it, we discussed it the other day and we said we would defer it. I'm trying to remember what it was. Anyway, I'll remember it later. Let's go ahead and let David talk.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I just wanted to make the quick comment that yeah, we want to go CRDs, but just because we have CRDs doesn't mean Helm doesn't have that value, and I think other people have pointed at that too. And so they're not orthogonal here. It's not one or the other. I think there's an ecosystem of tools within the cloud native industry, and you've got to find what tool works best for what problem. And so in the end, I think we're going to see a combination of that. So it's not just, I think, how do we protect investment? Because we're seeing customers use Helm. It's, does Helm fit to solve some of the problems? And how do we make best use of that? And where CRDs make sense, absolutely use them. But where Helm makes sense, use it. Don't try to reinvent something just because we can, I guess and maybe that's a little harsh, maybe that's not quite right, but that's kind of the thing, right? The right screwdriver for the right fastener. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Jean-Marie.
It makes sense. I think it's Jean-Marie was next.
Yeah, I just wanted to react on the second bullet, the fact that not all needed contributor may be present, and therefore not every voice would be represented. Isn't it the very nature of being an open source project, and wouldn't people get the chance to have their voice listened, even if they've not been contributing to the to that particular study or work, when the actual pull request would be a candidate merge into the main project?
Since I raised that question, I'll respond. I mean, I think that the issue isn't so much like this is a study, and the idea here, what I understand is being asked for here is, hey, let's look at how we're doing things in Nefio. Let's look at how we do things today with Helm, and how do we bridge this gap to protect existing investments as well as to enable functionality maybe more quickly that already exists in Helm. Yeah, it's all an open meeting. My concern is maybe it's just a personal concern. Like, I expect I'm going to be pretty focused on R1, and if I take the time out to go and participate in discussions in this study, then that's going to delay R1 potentially. And I believe that's true for several of the people who have been sort of leading the R1 discussion, that we're going to end up, their voices aren't going to be able to be involved, or R1's going to be delayed. I mean, maybe we can do it, but it's just even right now, this conversation of organizing the thing is taking up, half an hour of a meeting or more, and we, there's one more week's meeting ticked down towards R1. So like, that's my concern. It's just a matter of attention, and people only have so much of it. So coming in at the end of the study and saying, no, this is all wrong, you should do it this way, is bad for everybody, right? Like, not that I know better than everybody else, but I have been thinking about these particular problems, or familiar with these particular areas or these particular principles and concepts for some time now, more so than others. So I would think that I have a little more, maybe a few more ideas, and it might be hard for me to participate in the way that would, not waste people's time with the study. That's my main concern. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's fair. I've made some notes there, and we can go back and rejig the plan a little bit in light of that. I don't think the timing is quite so important as to make sure that we have that it's not ruled out from the start, or that we don't just keep on deferring the discussion forever until we come to it. I think it's kind of when it makes sense to bring it in, then we kick it off in earnest.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't want to. I'm not trying to like push this off. Like, it would be great if people went ahead and put down all their ideas and thought it through, and I'm sure they'll come up with ideas that I don't have too, but I just want to make it clear that those of us involved deeply in R1 may come in later with different ideas, and so there may be some inefficiency there, but that's okay too. I mean, that's not the end of the world.
Yeah, that's fair. And one approach might be that we have people who are actively contributing to the study, that we make sure that we have regular reviews, and we're expecting it to run a little bit slower due to to make sure that we have that cadence. There was a couple other comments, and I think it was Bala was next, and then Tim. I'm not sure if I got the order right there, but hopefully I did.
Yeah, Tim was
More than
before me, I
names.
think.
Yeah, thanks. Since it's proposed by both Nokia and Ericsson, with the top two vendors of 5G network functions. So my question is, in your product portfolio, specifically Nokia and Ericsson, I don't know whether we have a representation from Samsung also here. How many of this today's landscape, right? Especially 5G, both either RAN or core, both. How many of the network functions packaging is done through, when I say how many, I'm asking the percentage. The packaging is done through Helm, and versus any other technology, or is it completely Helm today for all your RAN and core functionalities? Is that how it's packaged? I know it's a question to multiple people, Ericsson, Nokia, and hopefully if somebody's in Samsung today.
Jean-Marie, you want to answer for Nokia or?
Yeah, sure. I would say 100% of the portfolio that is available in containers at some point in time is having Helm involved. So that's a significant investment and a significant level of coverage.
Yeah, today it's basically, we don't have, it's basically 100% Helm.
And I would say also it's not only a matter of view as a vendor. A significant proportion of customers, of operators, are requiring Helm as the release vehicle. So that's also for the operator community to go through a migration if the decision was not to preserve that investment in Helm.
Yeah. But so I think, Jean-Marie, if we ask the question, for example, I sorry to jump the line. One way is to basically say, can we protect that investment and use to CRDs versus trying to get Helm as a first-class citizen into, because for me, that are the two big questions to answer. Do you have a view of what that would be? Or you would say both, or is it one or the other, or is it
so again, that would be the purpose of that of such a study.
Sure.
The objective of Nephew is to go beyond the level of automation that is allowed by Helm now. So I don't think the idea is to extend the usage of Helm, etc., for the new functionalities. Those are not existing functionalities. So whatever technology choice that is made by the community is the one to go. That's for the current level of existing automation within that is using Helm that the study needs to concentrate on.
Mm-hmm.
So, sorry, Tim. I remember what I was going to say before, and I think it's relevant to this particular discussion, which is, and this maybe can be part of the study, but I want to ask if people know it up front. Today, if you get how many carriers actually use an unaltered, uncustomized Helm chart directly from a vendor? Can it actually create, or do they use the vendor's Helm chart as a starting point to help understand the network function? Because if you already have to customize and rebuild the Helm chart, then that actual investment in Helm is not like a building block. It's not a building block, it's a starting point. And actually, so that also can affect how we, rather than building in support for Helm, it may be building in support for helping use a Helm chart to construct an FEO way of doing things. So that's, I think, an important question and distinction.
True. I don't know all of, so I know a few of it. Answering as Nokia. So Bella, I think we are still at your point, so we're trying to answer your question. I know it's our Helm charts are very customizable, but it also means that we have basically exposed every freaking knob outside, right? So that has been, and I'm talking mainly about the core. So we have very highly customizable things at the moment. But that it means that we have lots of values you can play with.
Right, but even that is probably insufficient. So, I mean, when we were onboarding the particular vendor's network functions internally,
I'm not saying,
we got the chart.
I'm not saying it has never to be customized, but it has been fairly custom. It has been a lot of value has been exposed to get customization, but I will not say that it will never be customized.
But
Right.
yeah,
But I think what you're saying is the separation between the what you can put in the values.yaml to customize it versus going in and rewriting the Helm charts from
Exactly.
the actual
Yes.
internals of the Helm charts. And I wouldn't. I mean, I'm not a network function developer per se within Ericsson. I'm an OSS developer from that perspective. But my view would have been that it would have been leaning towards the exposing customizable parameters rather than.
What I'm asking is, are the existing Helm charts, is values.yaml sufficient? Is it actually in production sufficient? You can just go to Nokia's website, download
In
the
the vast majority of the case, absolutely. So
Okay.
it's a matter of discipline. Okay, saying I need to modify the Helm chart because I'm not satisfied with the value.yaml is like saying I'm modifying the implementation of a library because I'm not satisfied with the API signature of that library. That's a matter of discipline.
Right.
it's much, sorry, but I think we can spend a lot of time on that from a career point of view. I can tell you we are playing with a lot of vendors. The situation is not as as easy as you said, Jean-Marie, working with you or other big vendors. It's true, you provide some M charts, but sometimes they are embedded in other packages. So it's not always so easy to use. For customization, I think there are 2 points on customization. We can change the value, obviously, and it's the beauty of Helm. But sometimes we were forced, for example, to change the M charts from the vendor because there were some mistakes in the M charts. I won't blame anyone here, but it's some reality we can face. And I want also to outline another point. We are, let's say, moving, let's say, journey about CNF. We are just starting the journey today. We can see that some vendors, you started with M chart, with a few CRD and operators. But now, more and more vendors are also developing some CRD operators to manage their CNF and deploy them. So that's true. We may have some invested a little bit on that, but we are also we know also that we are in journey where we will need to accommodate with this evolution on the. So that's why I have no let's say I'm not against Helm or whatever, but I just want to say that we are in a moving ecosystem also. That's something to have in mind when we want to take some decision. And I would advocate also, as mentioned by John, that I think we need to focus on R1. I think I propose that in Slack or in previous exchanges. Let's focus on R1, reopen the debate for post R1. I fully agree. We need to discuss on that because the other point, I think we agree and we have some debates about, let's say Helm ecosystem it's wide, and I think we need also to consider that, obviously. But maybe focus on R1 first, reopen, let's say, the door for alternative of Helm or other solution, because we can also have some basic packaging also, some basic manifest on whatever solution. So it's not only Helm versus kept. I think it's much broader debates we should have. Just to give you my first opinion on that, but we can spend so many times debating on that topic. On if we are debating that now, we will lose time to achieve R1. So.
Yeah, maybe we can spend a little bit on time, maybe 10 minutes at the end to basically debate, should we start doing something in parallel versus wait till R1 is there? Because let's try to get 10 minutes and let's have other people and then we can.
Yeah, I mean, I was sorry.
Is that okay?
Yeah, I mean, it made sense to me. I wasn't actually expecting to get this much time in the meeting. I thought that this would be a rather full agenda otherwise with R1 topics. So I'm surprised we're giving it this much airtime. But in that context, I'm quite happy to sort of say I think we've got an agreement from this group. I don't know, I think there was, Bala, I don't know, there's the 2 hands that are left up, if there's any further comments that I need to take, or do we just go into the timing discussion?
Yeah, so I think Bala still asked, I think probably Nokia has given a little bit of a view. I don't know.
Yeah.
Here and can give a bit of a view from Ericsson, how you see this. Is it really to protect the NF function? So I think, yeah, so Bala, I think, was still raising his hand because he had a question to multiple people. So that's why multiple people saying.
Yeah, Wim, I wanted to thanks Wim for thanks for that. Yeah, I think I was trying to understand the lay of the land. I think Nokia has given the answer. So any such thing from Ericsson or any other NF vendor in this call, yeah, maybe with just one minute each max. Yeah.
So I mean, from an Ericsson perspective, as far as I'm aware, anyway, most of our network functions that are container-based are using Helm as their LCM tool. And I think that the main mechanism for customization is through the values.yaml. So input parameters that are exposed for configuration, as opposed to directly editing any of the Helm charts.
But so Kiran, you are not using Helm beyond the network function part, or because you can use Helm even in other spaces if you want? Are you mainly using it in the network?
We use it as well in the OSS products that I'm responsible for. We use it there as well, but I think the question was around network functions. So.
Okay. Understood.
So there was.
Is there anyone else from network function vendor who wants to answer? Is there anyone from Samsung on the call? Or... If not, I think Eric, are you still having your hand up? Or
yeah, hey, this is Jane from Avenir. Yes, we also are using Helm charts for our network functions onboarding.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Honestly, I don't think there's another solution out there today. I mean, there's
today that's it, right? I mean, that's it.
Yeah, I think there are lots of investment put in it on both sides, not only the ISV like us, but also operator side. They especially they're getting more and more on the CD part. And also for some of the hyperscaler integration, we see the Helm charts is supported there as well.
Yeah.
I would say at least some conversion function to convert the Helm charts into some sort of artifacts consumable by nephew. I think that would be the starting point. We don't necessarily need to bring in the entire Helm per se, but to convert the artifacts of Helm charts would be absolutely needed, because a lot of configurations are in that way.
So Jane, that you could do, like, right, that's one of the options. Like Talie's laid out a document. I don't know if you shared it yet, but like that's one of, definitely you could do that today, right? You could render a Helm chart and it becomes KRM, and at that point you can import it, but you lose that, all those values, all the ifs and thens and else's in there. So we're hoping to do more than just that, but you definitely could do that without any real changes, because the output of a rendered Helm chart is KRM. So once it's KRM, we're happy. But that's not necessarily maybe what you're looking for quite sufficient. Yeah, so.
That's getting into solution mode anyway. So I think that's start of what we would need to propose is some of the options in the study. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Hey, two questions. First, 2 calls ago, someone posted a link to some Helm charts that are beyond free 5GC. I noted down, but now I can't find it. So if you don't mind resharing. Yeah.
I will do.
And second part, to follow the discussion, if Helm chart generate KRMs, we can just use that as a starting point for R2, right? Or for a post R1 discussion. Meaning we're willing, this is just my opinion. And funny thing, somebody from Cisco pinged me this morning and said, hey, we have a customer, we need you to work on this stuff if you're interested. So it's very germane to the discussion. Helm charts can be the first, the artifacts generated by Helm chart can be the first integration point with Nepio while we debate the rest, right? Figure out a path forward. That way we're accommodating without, what my concern is turning off some vendors, some operators, some hyperscaler who are invested in the Helm charts.
Definitely, and that's something, there's zero work involved for us to do that, right? You can render a Helm chart and then you can throw a cat file in there and all of a sudden it's a package. The question is, when do you do the rendering? So the thing you can do today without any work from us is the rendering can be done ahead of time. But that might not be sufficient. You may decide, I don't want to render ahead of time. I want to render a little later in that. I want to render just before fan out, but I want to use some of the Nepio stuff to inject into the values file. I can render after fan out. I can render at config sync time, which is already supported as well, by the way. So all of these things are part of those options. It's where you can do the rendering, what access to manipulating the inputs and outputs of the rendering do we want to support? And there's some, I would call it crude support for this in Captain Config Sync now. There is a render Helm chart function, but it's got limitations. There's rendering Helm charts in the Config Sync, but it's got limitations. And so the study needs to understand, that's why it's so important to get those actual real Helm charts, because we want to understand where the current crude methods of doing it are insufficient and how we need to do better.
Yeah, for me, the Helm chart is really the network functions rendering, right? At the workload cluster level. That's how I think of it. I could be wrong.
We have two ways to do it, right? Either what you said is we do it before you enter Nepio, or after, so at the very end, right?
Yeah,
so
at the very end. Yeah.
But okay, we have to, that's part of the probably what the study should figure out, whether what are the pros and cons of these approaches, whether one will whether that will work, is it sufficient, what works, what not doesn't. So all of that is part of what the study should basically tell us. And then we basically say, okay, for lease 2, this is what we do for so maybe we'll tackle this first, and that next, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, like Tali likes to say, the devil is in the details. So
100%, yeah. That's why it's hard.
I think it's, sorry, I think also we are confusing maybe the packaging and what we are including in the packaging, because typically we said also with Nepio, the objective is also to push towards CRD on operators. So we need also to have that in mind. So it's not only the packaging or the rendering, it's also the way we are defining all our, let's say, elements we want to automate. So it's just to have in mind also this topic.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's why it's not so easy to say here is something, go and do it. We have to look at the whole picture. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And Karen, if you can add rendering, it's not just at the start and the end. It's actually, we can insert it in the middle too, and so we have to look at all those options. Start and the end is easy. We should already have that.
Yeah, just a quick add-on. It could also be a Helm operator in the workload cluster. There are a lot of options, but anyway, I think we don't need to get into all the technical stuff right now, but two things, Kieran. One, if you could share these slides and put them in the G drive for the Nepio project, I think that would be helpful. I can help you do that. And second, I'm a little bit worried here with this discussion because we're in SIG automation, but Kieran, as you mentioned, this started with a TSC discussion. I think this needs to be a TSC decision, right? Because this is really about the nature of the project. As you're pointing out, you're thinking about multi-release support for Helm, possibly making Helm a first class or maybe second class citizen in Nepio. there's a lot of big product related issues here. I feel like this is something SIG automation can't decide on its own. It's something that the TSC needs to decide, understanding the implications of what it is.
My understanding of the proposal is for SIG automation and others, potentially other SIGs if it's relevant, to do this study and then go back to TSC.
Sure, we can present our findings to TSC decision. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was the output of what the discussion was last Thursday, but I'm happy to take it back to them to get a clarification.
Well, as John pointed out, just doing this research is time, right? So is it effort to do now? Would the TSC prefer that we focus on other things right now? I mean, the TSC defines the priorities at the end of the day.
Yeah. But so what we got as a feedback, I think, Tal, from my understanding, is that actually it was both SIG 1, so SIG and SIG 2, who were asked to have a discussion and then come up with a plan back to the TSC, and then we would see how to do it. That was so basically
we're doing then exactly what the TSC wants, so that's good.
Correct, yeah, correct. And so I think, yeah, maybe we have 10 minutes left. I think probably the biggest debate is or discussion is going to be, I don't think anyone disagrees to do this. The question is, would we spend time, or how do we people feel to do stuff before R1 versus doing it once R1 is delivered? Probably, right? Should we raise hands, or I don't know how to do it, but raise hands to say, wait till R1 is done versus do something in parallel? Or yeah, John, you have something? Yeah.
Oh, I thought we were going to argue. I just 10
minutes will not be enough.
I do think that it would be. It's not just. I do think it would be in the interest of doing this properly to get a substantial way through the R1 development before we go into the study. Like Stephen said, this is an open community. Anybody can go try anything they want at any time. The reason, though, I say that is that I think that honestly, we're still developing concepts for Nephia, right? And so as those concepts solidify and people's understanding of them solidify, it will be easier to evaluate how Helm fits in. Right now, we've got an amorphous thing, and we're going to take something and try and fit it into the amorphous thing, and it's too hard. Yeah. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, so my point was a little bit to ask the community what they felt. So just to have an opinion of the people on this call, to actually see what they feel around it in order to understand what we should do. Because if the majority says, okay, wait till R1, okay, then probably that would be our advice.
Right.
Or versus do something about. So that would be my. So why I would ask the question is, if the majority would say wait till R1 or most of R1 is done and then we can tackle it, then that would be the advice.
Okay.
But okay, Tim, you had a question or a comment.
Yeah, so I think minimally, guys, to be honest with you, minimally what you can do is you can go back and we've spent an hour already talking about this, right? But let's go back and say, okay, it started with the telco world uses Helm, right? The first question was how does the telco world use Helm? Let's go answer that. You can do that independent of doing R1. You got Jean-Marie, you got other vendors, you got Mavenir as an integrator, you got all these people that may or may not be actively contributing to R1 that can at least say, oh, here's how we use it, and here's an example, right? I think that's what you're asking for, because that's the first point before the people that want to come to a solution. They seem to be asking, well, how are they being used? What does it look like? And so I think you can answer that during the R1 timeframe if you want. Baseline the principles or whatever. I'm not quite sure exactly what all that means, but if you do that, if you do that during R1, I think the guys would be well happy to say thank you for doing that. Now I understand what you mean by Helm is used in telco.
Yeah, that would be indeed. So one of the things could be that we let's say if you don't come up with the architecture part of it, but basically start with some people basically to clarify the requirements and so on and so forth, to come to then go to the second stage, to prepare it as much as possible to get to the next stage of then the discussion on how we would do it, right? So in other words, having people basically focusing on what does it mean, how should it look like, what do we really need? That would indeed, I think, be possible perfectly in parallel, because probably these are less the same people, because these are mainly the NF vendors that should come together and try to clarify that, right?
And then get the usage verified by network architecture, right? If you're not already using them as a point of input. And then I think you're good. I think you got a question, at least we know what we're dealing with right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So
a couple of updates there to the schedule in response to that. I didn't want to kick the tire down the road 100%, but I think what we're saying is let's get an understanding of what we mean by Helm support, do that in parallel to R1. That gives us time, once we've validated that those are valid requirements and that that's something that Nefia wants to support, we can bring that to the network architecture and then back to this group. Then we can then kick off the study activity to say, right, that's what we want to do. Let's see how we can go about doing it and what the best approach is.
Yeah, to do it in two stages.
Sense.
I basically focus on the requirements first, so I have that in parallel. I also focus on what does it mean, try to clarify as much as possible. Hopefully, ideally with some examples, as John said, because the dev, and as Tal said, the devil is in the detail, and I agree. So the more clarification that is there on what it means, and if we can get examples of stuff like that on how it does, will help us all. So would that be okay for everyone if we do it that way? That we basically say, okay, let the Ericsson, Mavenir, the Nokias of this world or Samsungs get together, prepare it better on what it means. And then once we have that solidified, we also probably are further in R1, and then we can have a conversation on what to do next. Would that make sense?
That makes sense to me.
Yeah, yeah, sure. It's more about what rather than how, right? So how is, that's when I think John's comment makes total sense, because a lot of brain trust need to be involved. Collecting the
I think we have lots of we have lots of creative people on this call with lots of ideas. So I don't think we have we have lack of that, but probably those people are involved in R1. So that's why.
So maybe just to make
the more.
But Wim, I'm sorry. I would like to have a comment on that, because you say you will spend some time between the vendors to state that, but meanwhile we are also expecting from vendors to provide feedback on the way to define some controllers, network function controller, and so on. I think it will be also useful to spend time on that. You see what I mean? So
sure. Yeah, so in other words, so Eric, what we are basically saying in my view is the following: like, okay, we are going to staff. R1 is getting staffed, right? So that's our priority, right? There has been a request to the TSC to support Helm, right? So the people or the vendors that are interested in that can spend their time trying to. What we are asking is try to clarify much better what we want to achieve for that, and of course. The vendors that are involved, depending on how much time they have, they have to prioritize, because we are an open community, so we cannot say you do this and you do that. So the vendors have to decide where they spend their effort on it, and as a result, we can determine what would be the outcome there, right? So that's a little bit the chicken and egg situation we have, I think. But I do agree. I mean, what we would like to do I think what your message is, Eric, to the vendor, please do support both.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, also, no, it's also support the current work we want to achieve in R1.
Yeah.
That's
Yes,
also my message.
Actually, what you're saying is, actually your message is, I think I was wrong. Prioritize R1, and if you have effort left, you can spend it on help.
Yeah.
If you were, I think that's what you're saying. Probably, yeah.
So just as a formality, then I'll add a sub-project to the list, and we need somebody to organize that, and it'll say scoped to research in the R1 timeframe.
Yeah.
So I won't change the form that we just sent out. So whoever is leading that, is that you, Kieran? Should I put you down as somebody who wants to organize this? You'll have to solicit participants.
Yep.
We can help you schedule meetings, I think, John, because we probably want to use the same Zoom. I'm willing to help you to set up the meetings and stuff like that, such that you use the Zoom account and stuff like that.
Brilliant.
Okay,
Thank you, Kieran. This is a valuable contribution. Thank you.
Yeah, Vish, we're already past time, so if it's
real quick. So, who is the equivalent of a delivery manager here? Who actually controls scope? Is it TSC at this time? I think Tal alluded to it, that this needs to be taken up at TSC. So, does this need to be run by TSC to say that we're going to form a subgroup?
No, the TSC actually lets us create sub-projects. It's part of the charter. It's up to us.
But so this is sort of each of those sub-projects we're gonna need to work together to say, hey, here's the scope we've outlined for R1 that came from the TSC or from SIG, really from NetArch, and then we need to say whether we can deliver it, and that's up to these little sub-projects to figure out whether they can deliver on their pieces. So that's why go to that forum, sign up for the sub-projects you're interested in. Those smaller teams will meet, and we'll figure out exactly what we have to do. We'll triage the issues. We'll figure out the specific designs that need more fleshing out, et cetera, and we'll figure out whether we have the resources to do it and go back to the TSC.
But I think probably what I'll do is I'll take this also to SIG NetArch just to give them some feedback and some chance to see if anybody there has a different viewpoint, and then probably also take it back to the TSC then to give them information on the fact that we're progressing this. I think, well, certainly for me, it's a new way of working, and maybe it's just good manners to make sure that people know that we're progressing it and it hasn't dropped off the radar.
That makes sense.
So,
and what we understand, I think, Kieran, is that you would be driving that a little bit if you don't, that you would be the subgroup leader, as we call it, or the shepherd for it to coordinate. Would that be okay?
Yeah, you can put me down for that. That's fine.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, I guess we're past time, so thank you, everybody.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, everybody. It was a good conversation.
Thank you.
No, thanks. Bye.